It premiered on March 26, 1973, and it has never stopped. Over 53 years, more than 13,000 episodes, the longest-running daytime drama currently on American television and the most consistently watched soap opera in the history of the medium. The Young and the Restless built itself around the fictional town of Genoa City, Wisconsin, around the Newman and Abbott and Chancellor families, and around a creative vision from co-creators William J. Bell and Lee Philip Bell that understood the daytime audience with a precision that its competitors rarely matched. Today, the show is still on the air. Some of the people who built it are still on that air with it. Others have gone, some young, some at the end of long lives, one in circumstances that left the soap opera community devastated, and the question of who was responsible for what unanswered. This is where they all ended up. Number 1 is Jeanne Cooper, who played Katherine Chancellor, the wealthy, complicated, fiercely loyal Grand Dame of Genoa City, from the show's earliest months in 1973 until 5 days before her death in 2013, and who became in those 4 decades one of the longest-serving actors in the history of American daytime television. She was born Wilma Jeanne Cooper on October 25, 1928, in Taft, California, a small Central Valley oil town. She worked her way into film and television through the 1950s and 1960s, appearing in westerns and crime dramas and accumulating a resume of steady, professional work without ever quite becoming the name she deserved to be. Katherine Chancellor, introduced in 1973 as the wealthy wife of the powerful Philip Chancellor Theac, changed that. The character was added to the show when ratings needed help, and Cooper took her and made her one of the defining presences in daytime television history, appearing in over 1,400 episodes, winning 2 Daytime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Lead Actress, and earning 11 nominations total across her 4 decades on the show. What most viewers remember most specifically about Jeanne Cooper's work on The Young and the Restless is an event in 1984 that was, at the time, completely unprecedented in the history of soap opera. Cooper underwent a real-life facelift and arranged for the procedure, the preparation, the surgery, the hospitalization, the recovery, to be filmed and incorporated into a Katherine Chancellor storyline in which her character underwent the same surgery simultaneously. The episode aired as it happened. The audience watched Jeanne Cooper's actual surgical procedure and actual recovery as part of the dramatic narrative of the show. It was one of the most audacious pieces of television storytelling in the medium's history, and it opened a public conversation about cosmetic surgery and aging and women's relationship to their own appearance that Cooper later said she was prouder of than almost anything else she had done. Her son is actor Corbin Burnson, who appeared on the show as Father Todd, playing his own mother's on-screen priest. A casting choice of such specific warmth that it tells you something about the relationship between the actress and the show's longtime creator William Bell. Cooper was at the center of the show's creative and emotional life for nearly 4 decades. The character other characters organized themselves around, the Grand Dame whose sobriety struggles and romantic disasters and ferocious loyalties gave the show much of its moral weight in a genre that needed weight to survive. Her last appearance on The Young and the Restless aired on May 3, 2013. She died on May 8, 2013 in a Los Angeles hospital of an undisclosed illness. She was 84. Her son Corbin Burnson announced her death on social media. Kate Linder, who had played Katherine's housekeeper and confidant Esther Valentine for decades, called Cooper her mentor and an amazing actress and friend. Show co-creator Laura Bell said, "Jeanne was the matriarch of the show in every sense of the word." The production created a storyline in which Katherine Chancellor's death was written into the show, a final episode for a character played by the same person for 40 years. Jeanne Cooper's burial location has not been publicly documented. She left the show 5 days before she died, playing Katherine to the very last moment the cameras would allow her. Number 2 is Kristoff St, who played Neil Winters, the self-made businessman who rose from mailroom to boardroom at Newman Enterprises, who became one of the show's most significant black characters across nearly 3 decades, and whose death in 2019 came at the end of years of grief, so sustained and so public that the soap opera community had been watching him struggle for a long time before it ended. He was born on July 15, 15, 1966, in New York City, the son of actor Kristoff St. He had been appearing on screen since 1975, when he played young actors' roles in various productions and joined The Young and the Restless in 1991 as Neil Winters, a role he would play for 28 years. Neil Winters was, across those 28 years, one of the show's most important characters, a man whose professional success and personal struggles gave the show storylines that addressed addiction, romance, grief, and the particular pressures of being a black professional in a fictional corporate America. St. John won the Daytime Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a Drama Series multiple times for the role. He was, by every account of the people who worked with him, a generous and warm presence on the set, someone who gave fully to the scenes he was in and made everyone around him better. In 2014, his son Julian St. John died by suicide at age 24 in a psychiatric facility. The loss was catastrophic. St. John had filed a lawsuit against the facility, alleging negligence, and spent the following years in a grief so profound that it changed him visibly. He made public statements about his struggle. He was hospitalized on multiple occasions. The industry around him watched with concern that his colleagues expressed in interviews, carefully, because none of them could fix what had happened to his family. On February 3, 2019, friends who had been unable to reach him called the police. He was found unresponsive at his home in the San Fernando Valley. He was pronounced dead at the scene. He was 52 years old. The official cause of death was hypertrophic heart disease, exacerbated by alcohol. He is buried at Valley Oaks Memorial Park in Westlake Village, California. The show held a tribute episode. His co-stars spoke about him publicly with a grief that was real and unperformed. The son of a father who had died too early, Neil Winters had spent 28 years building something. Kristoff St. John spent his final years trying to survive the thing that unmade him, and he could not outlast it. If these stories mean something to you, please subscribe. Every detail in this script was researched and verified. Your subscription keeps this channel going. Number 3 is Eric Braeden, who has played Victor Newman, the ruthless, complicated, orphaned billionaire patriarch of the Newman family since February 8, 1980, making him, as of 2026, the longest-serving current cast member of the show, and one of the longest-serving actors in the history of American daytime television. He was born Hans-Jörg Gudegast on April 3, 1941, in Bredenbeck, in what was then the Free State of Prussia in Germany. He came to the United States as a teenager, earned a track and field scholarship to Montana State University, worked various jobs, and arrived in Hollywood in the early 1960s. For most of the following 2 decades, he was cast primarily as German villains, the accent and the physicality that American television associated with Cold War-era menace. He played Nazi officers, he played enemy soldiers. He was, as he has said in multiple interviews, offered variations of the same type for 20 years. By 1980, when William Bell offered him Victor Newman, he had been doing it long enough that he almost turned the role down because it felt like more of the same. He almost left after a year. What changed his mind was a scene. Bell wrote a backstory for Victor Newman that revealed he had been abandoned at an orphanage at age 7 by a destitute mother who had herself been fleeing an alcoholic, violent husband. That one piece of history, a child left at an institution by a parent who could not care for him, gave Braeden a character with a wound underneath the arrogance, a man whose ruthlessness was the armor built over a childhood defined by abandonment. He stayed. He has been there for 46 years. In January 2025, the Palisades fire in Los Angeles destroyed the home he had lived in for 45 years. The loss was devastating, and he said so publicly, with the same directness that has always characterized his public statements. In April 2023, he had been diagnosed with bladder cancer. He underwent surgery and 6 weeks of immunotherapy. The cancer was brought under control. In July 2026, he received a Daytime Emmy nomination for Outstanding Lead Actor at age 85, and said in an interview that the nomination meant everything to him. He has no intention of retiring. He shoots more than 100 pages of dialogue a day, and has done so for 4 decades. Eric Braeden is 85 years old and still playing Victor Newman on a show that is still the most watched daytime drama on American television. He once almost quit. He is still there. Number 4 is Melody Thomas Scott, who has played Nikki Newman, Victor's wife, the former exotic dancer who rose to become the First Lady of Genoa City since 1979, making her the longest-serving current female cast member of the show. She was born on April 18, 1956, in Los Angeles, California, and had been a child actress before The Young and the Restless, appearing in The Rockford Files, in Alfred Hitchcock's last film, Family Plot, in 1976, and in a series of other television roles that gave her a solid professional foundation before the show made her a daytime institution. Nikki Newman began as a supporting character and grew, across more than 4 decades, into one of the most complex figures the show has produced, a woman whose alcoholism storylines, whose marriage to Victor, whose losses and her recoveries from them gave Melody Thomas Scott some of the most demanding material in daytime television. She was not nominated for the Emmy in 2025 for what Eric Braeden publicly called bravura work in Nikki's addiction storyline, a fact Braeden raised in interviews with visible frustration on her behalf. She is alive in 2026, still playing Nikki, still at the center of the show that has had her since she was 23 years old. Number 5 is Lauralee Bell, who has played Christine Blair Williams, the attorney known as Cricket, one of the show's central moral voices, since 1983, when she joined the cast at age 15. She was born on December 22, 1968, in Chicago, Illinois, the daughter of The Young and the Restless co-creators William J. Bell and Lee Phillip Bell. She grew up on the show in the most literal possible sense. It was her parents' creation and her professional home simultaneously, a circumstance that required her to build a career in a context that was both uniquely supportive and uniquely complicated. Christine Blair is one of the show's few characters who has remained consistently present across 4 decades, and Bell has played her with a professional constancy that honors both the character's history and the institution her family built. She is alive in 2026, still playing Cricket, 43 years after she first walked into Genoa City as a teenager. Number 6 is Brenda Dixon, who played Jill Foster Abbott, the scheming, ambitious former hairdresser whose rivalry with Katherine Chancellor became one of the defining feuds in soap opera history from 1973 to 1983, and then again in 1987 to 1988. She was born on June 10, 1948, in Salt Lake City, Utah. The character of Jill Foster was one of the original characters of the show, and Dixon built her into a figure whose ambition and whose vulnerability were simultaneously present, a woman who used every asset she had because she had started with very little and understood exactly what it cost not to. Her rivalry with Jeanne Cooper's Katherine Chancellor sustained the show through many of its early seasons and established the template for the extended personal feud as a narrative engine that daytime television has used ever since. Dixon left the show in circumstances that became one of the most discussed contentious exits in soap opera history. She filed a lawsuit against the production, claiming harassment and wrongful termination. The case was eventually settled. She made a public video in the 1980s called Welcome to My Home, a self-produced home video tour of her lifestyle that was initially mocked and eventually became something of a camp classic, reassessed decades later as a document of a specific kind of 1980s celebrity that had not been seen before and has not quite been replicated since. She struggled with personal difficulties in her later years. Brenda Dixon died in 2024. The specific circumstances and exact date of her death were not widely publicized in the immediate period following. She was 75 or 76 years old at the time. Her burial location has not been publicly documented. The woman who built the most durable rivalry in The Young and the Restless's history died quietly, outside the spotlight she had inhabited so completely during the show's early years. Number 7 is Doug Davidson, who has played Paul Williams, the private investigator, later police chief, who has been Genoa City's most reliable law enforcement presence since 1978, making him one of the show's longest-serving current cast members. He was born on October 24, 1954, in Glendale, California, and joined The Young and the Restless at age 23, in a role that the show's creators designed as a romantic lead and that evolved, across nearly 5 decades, into something considerably more complex. Paul Williams has been married multiple times on screen, has investigated crimes, has uncovered conspiracies, and has served as the narrative mechanism through which the show conducts much of its law enforcement and mystery plotting. Davidson has been Emmy-nominated for the role multiple times and won the Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in 1992. He remains part of the show's current cast in 2026, still in Genoa City, still the most dependable law enforcement presence the city has known since 1978. Few actors in the history of American television have spent as long in the same role, not because they had no other options, but because the work itself remained worth doing and the character continued to be given something to say. Paul Williams has been saying it since the Carter administration. They ended up in undocumented Los Angeles locations, in Valley Oaks Memorial Park in Westlake Village, and on a CBS soundstage where a German-American actor who once nearly quit is still playing the most ruthless man in Genoa City at 85 years old. Jeanne Cooper played Katherine Chancellor until 5 days before she died. Kristoff St played Neil Winters until his grief made it impossible to go on. Brenda Dixon played Jill Foster until the institution let her go, and she spent the following decades fighting to define herself on her own terms. And 3 of them are still there: Eric Braeden, Melody Thomas Scott, Laura Lee Bell. In the same zip code they have occupied for 40 and 50 years, still shooting 100 pages a day, still telling Genoa City's stories, still the faces that the most consistent audience in daytime television history wakes up to find. The show is still on. It has never not been on, and some of the people who made it what it is are still on with it, which is either a miracle of longevity or simply what happens when you build something people cannot stop watching. If these stories meant something to you, leave a comment below. Tell me which one hit hardest. I read every reply.